Good afternoon to everyone on the call. Really nice to see everyone. So I'm thinking about these webinars a little bit like when you get on an airplane, you're not 100% sure if you're on the right flight. So just wanted to remind everyone that this is Sharsheret. We are the Jewish breast and ovarian cancer community. And the webinar we're presenting now is Mindfulness Strategies for Navigating COVID-19. So really, really excited to see all of you. Which means that you are ready to learn more and put some strategies together to address what you're dealing with. The goal for today's session is really the science behind mindfulness and how it can help all of us deal with both the physical aspects of what we're dealing with and also the spiritual discomfort of this moment. And it's going to be very practical. The goal is that at the end of the session, you will have 4 new tools and strategies that you can immediately put into action that should help ease a little bit what you're going through, the constant distraction, the stress that we're all facing. This is practical help. The timing is not by accident. We chose to present this during Passover because we know it's challenging. No one is celebrating the way we normally do, whether that means you're traveling or celebrating it with extended family, friends. It's not normal life. And the weeks, I think we're about 4 weeks here. I'm in the Northeast, and we're dealing with a dismal day of weather. So all this is affecting how we feel. And it adds to the stress. So we're going to come up with these techniques to help with the stress. So there's a couple of things. If you want to participate, this call is going to be recorded. So for those who were not available, they can access it afterwards on Sharsharet's website. But you can participate anonymously. You know, we're very mindful of people's privacy. So if this is something that you would like to participate privately, you can go into the box with your name on it. There are 3 dots in the top corner. Click on it and you can rename yourself. You can be, you know, anything you want to be. And you can also turn off the video portion on the bottom of your screen. In different screens, it shows up in different places. There's also an opportunity to call in, and it's in the chat. If you're on, you can see it in the chat. The number is 1-669-900-6833. And then the meeting ID is 167-421-068. And the password is 370670. And these instructions periodically added to the chat box if you choose to do so. So again, we're so glad that us and open. I feel like it's a tight-knit community and we can all feel comfortable with each other as we take the next half hour to kind of de-stress, decompose just a little bit. Our expert on the call today is Linda Janasz. She is a leading researcher and award-winning journalist with a PhD. She created the 6-week training program called Mindfulness, Meditation, and Movement. Her Working Wisdom project is part of Berkeley's Greater Good IDO, and she's the founder of Mindfulness Alliance, which is a nonprofit that supports the work and research of mindfulness and its practical applications. She works with individuals and corporations, helping thousands cultivate balance in an unbalanced world. And right now, I don't think our world is very balanced. Linda has worked with our Sharsheret, Florida office in the past, and she shares her knowledge of mindfulness with our callers and our volunteers in Florida. I wanted to just do a quick thank you to our sponsors today, Seattle Genetics and the Sigmund and Edith Blumenthal Foundation, whose support during this uncertain time has really made it possible for us to present these kind of sessions for you. So we're going to start off with Linda. I'm going to introduce her, and then we're going to do a little bit of questions and answers. So it's really my pleasure to open up the floor to Linda. So Linda, thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to Sharsheret. As you had mentioned, I've had the privilege of sharing some of this work and research with the Florida office and to some of the individuals here. So I want to tell you how much I respect and honor the work that you do. So over this next about half hour, more or less, probably a bit more, we're going to talk about some science and strategies for cultivating more ease in our life. And I think we could all use that right now. But it's necessary for us to understand the opposite of ease is unease. And unease can lead to chronic stress. And what chronic stress can lead to is dis-ease. So right now, understanding, now but always, the idea of cultivating more calm actually impacts our immune response. And I think that that's really relevant. So some of the tools and strategies that we're going to talk about today will help you reduce stress and anxiety, increase emotional regulation, improve positive emotions and decision-making, reduce the pain response, improve your focus, and some of our evidence-based research shows us may be as good as antidepressants in reducing depression in the lab. So some of these practices I'm taking from the 6-week program, and we're going to leave you with some own work or shalom work, developing some practices for peace in your life. And let me just preface this by saying, you know, often I'll hear people say, well, I'm not good at meditation, I'm not good at that. But the reality is, the more we practice, the more familiar we become with anything. Even if it's hitting a tennis ball, whether it's putting a ball in a basket, we become more comfortable. And this is about our relationship with ourselves, our thoughts, and our emotions. And I can't think of anything more important than this. And I know firsthand, this can improve everything in your life. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal journey, which I don't normally, but I think it's relevant to this. About, way back when, we had a terrible family tragedy. And at that time, despite the fact that I had training into psychotherapy, I personally fell into a black hole and I couldn't quite get my way out of it. It was around this time where MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, was being publicly introduced, and I was invited to study this at South Miami Hospital. After which I went on to study Buddhism through Harvard. And there was a saying, a quote in those scriptures that said, pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. Think about that for a second. Pain is inevitable and suffering is optional. We are all going to have great pain in our lives, whether it be our personal journeys or people that we love and care about. And even right now, the fear and the pain associated with this pandemic. But the idea that we can reduce our suffering, to me, is so significant. And that's when I went on to develop the MMM 6-week program. And it's really designed to teach you the skills to improve your capacity to self-manage. So let's do a very quick psychology lesson. We human beings have something called a negativity bias. Evolutionary psychologists would say that we remember things that are more negative as a survival mechanism for us. We know when we think back and we think of things that have caused us suffering, hardship, fear, or pain, we feel it differently than the things that were kind of joyful. They tend not to stick with us in the same way. So these emotional sensations that show up for us, remember, our thoughts and our feelings are very linked. Our goal is to rise above this conditioning, managing the emotions that show up. And in the words of the great British philosopher, George Bernard Shaw, to me, mindfulness, he didn't quite say this. He said, we don't find ourselves, we create ourselves. Mindfulness is, to me, where that beautiful space is about creating ourselves. It's intentional. It's an intentional and attitudinal way of showing up to our experience. So the science, again, we have to understand the nature of fear. Fear is a normal part of what will show up for us. It's, again, there to keep us safe, but trauma and worry lives in the bodies. Understanding right now, many of us are dealing with significant worry. Worry really ultimately lives in the future. It is our desire, truly, right? What are we doing next week, next month? How do we plan for the kids? Where will they go to college? Where will I be in 6 months? It's that what if place. But the science tells us that with mindful awareness and by being present, we increase our happiness. So we're going to do our first exercise. It is one thing to understand the science, but we human beings, we can't think our way out of something. We need to do it. We need to inhabit it. We need to experience it. So I'm going to encourage everybody in your own homes, in your own lab. Your laboratory is your mind, your heart, your spirit. We're going to do an exercise called the meta-awareness exercise. So before we start, let me just share with you the science of thinking. Every minute, we have about 44 thoughts. An average day, you have about 65,000 thoughts. I am just going to pop on, and I just want to share with you something that I think is worth. Oh, can I share this with you? Let me just see. All righty. I don't know if I can, but well, I will show you another slide after. It's of a person standing there, cartoon, and there's thousands of thoughts flooding through their head. Bottom line, mindfulness and meditation is developing a healthy relationship with our thoughts. Because the reality is, thoughts are not facts. Repeat that to yourself. Thoughts are not facts. If we have about 65,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are there to keep us safe, a thought is not necessarily a fact, but it's hard for us to not be hooked or triggered by our thinking. So meta-awareness in our own labs now, we're going to do 2 parts of a practice. I'd like you to close your eyes, soften into this now. And I'd essentially like you to watch and notice your thoughts and any sensations you may have in your body. And I'm going to ask you to think, let's go to a place, a memory, an experience. Perhaps a Pesach Seder, a Seder you had last year. Can you smell the food? Can you see who's sitting there around the table? Can you see their faces? And if you can, send those that are with you, even now, even though we're social distancing, send them some love. And let's open our eyes. The idea that we are ultimately cultivating an improved relationship with our thinking is really what this is about. For many of us, when we went to that Pesach Seder last year, we could actually maybe smell the chicken soup. We could see the faces of those that we cared about. Very often when we understand that a thought can turn into an emotion, really, that's classical conditioning. Ivan Pavlov, the Russian psychologist, understood that when they rang the bell, that a dog, when it knew it was going to have food, would salivate. A thought can turn into a feeling. What meta-awareness allows us to do, and interoception, is begin to understand that our thoughts and our feelings are interconnected. And the more that we understand this, we begin to notice faulty thinking. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy will tell us to notice our patterns of thinking. Like, overthinking helps me solve problems. Or, I worry about you because I care. This is about our beginning to understand our relationship with our thoughts and our feelings, even such things as fear being triggered for us. So the next part of this exercise, once we start noticing, and I think once you begin to notice your relationship with your thinking, it is the beginning of a kind of enlightenment. When we recognize that all of the thoughts that we have aren't factual, and we can create some space, we don't get hooked by things in the same way. We tend to be able to respond to our environments in a wiser and clearer way. Meditation is a formal practice. It is strengthening the control over the workings of our brain. Now, we understand that our brain is like a muscle. And when we meditate, we are actually, it's like a bicep curl for our brain. With this 6-week program, if you were to take it, and I will invite everyone to take it during this time, that if we put you into an MRI and over the 6-week period you were meditating, you'd actually strengthen the prefrontal cortex, the area of your brain where you make decisions, and shrink the amygdala, which is that fight or flight section. But there's also another component other than just purely meditating that is significant. It's a tool I'm going to encourage everybody to start using right now. It is breath. By slowing our breath down and consciously breathing, it is the most productive thing that you can do for creating immediate relief from stress and anxiety and depression. For those of you who have perhaps taken yoga, you know pranayama breath, this idea of breath of life, this inhaling and exhaling in a regulated way, actually impacts our parasympathetic system. And in Judaism, the Hebrew word ruach refers to the divine force. It also means breath or spirit, and it can also refer to somebody's emotional state. So we breathe about 22,000 times a day. Managing our breath right now and engaging in that relaxation response can reduce your cortisol. So we're going to begin this exercise. Place your hand on your diaphragm, on your belly, and begin to notice the breath coming in through the nostril, in through the chest, and into the diaphragm. The gentle expansion and contraction. There's an area called the polyvagus theory that helps our body shift from fight or flight to rest and digest. Slowing our breath down and regulating it actually helps our heartbeat, our capacity to focus. So we're going to try something that is a little bit different. I'm going to encourage you to slowly inhale, and then I'm going to encourage you to hold at the top for 4 seconds and then slow the breath down. So let's begin to inhale. Gently, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale gently to your own rhythm all the way out. And soften your gaze now. Inhale, 1, 3, and 4, and exhale. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's do that one more time. Inhaling, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pause at a space that is right for you, and exhaling all the way out. And we're going to add an additional piece to this now. So mindful breathing to me is something you can take with you throughout your day. We're going to add on a piece of meditation now, that brain exercise, where we're going to notice the breath coming in and exhaling. So soften your gaze. And you may notice the breath coming in a little cooler and exhaling a little bit warmer. And let's follow the rhythm of your own breath. The gentle pause and exhaling all the way out. For the next moment, with meta-awareness, notice any distraction that you have and bring it back to the air, gently entering your nostril and then exhaling. And when you are ready, take a deep breath and come all the way back. Now just process what that was like. Our recognizing that we can actually calm ourselves down and be more present is extraordinary. This to me is almost one of the magic wands, the tools, is that breath. And as you explore the practice, the mental exercise and controlling how we respond to our thinking, meditation over time becomes easier. So I notice here on my screen it says host disabled attendee screen sharing. So I was going to show you, and perhaps I can, actually an X-ray, an MRI of somebody before and after meditating. Let me see if we can do that. There we go. Let me just share that with you. Can you see that? Not if you can, the before and after meditating. It's pretty extraordinary. Only 10 minutes of meditation. It shows you really what begins to happen in the brain. And I think that that's quite extraordinary. We aren't really required a lot of time to do this. Even a little bit of time, 5 to 10 minutes every day, can make an enormous difference on your life, in your well-being, and in your happiness. What is truly so extraordinary is that we mind wander about 47% of the time. Half of the time we're not here. We're thinking about the past and we're thinking about the future. So mind wandering is ubiquitous and it affects everything that we do. But mind wandering is the most common predictors of unhappiness. And especially now when we feel this potentially impending threat, we tend to be everywhere else but here. The more we are present, the more we notice what is actually good in our lives. Mind wandering is also a predictor of an elevation of fear and stress. So here's our next exercise. It's a really simple one that I developed. It's called the mindful snapshot. We know what it's like to go around taking pictures with our phones. But when we actually mentally focus and take a snapshot, it requires us to come back to what we're doing. Because when we are able to redirect, and wherever you are right now, take a second, turn from the screen and notice where you are. Focus and take a mental snapshot. It's as simple as redirecting us, and it reduces rumination, which is that mental spinning where you have a thought that you can't quite make sense of. We all know what it feels like. It can wake us up at night, that spinning thinking. A mindful snapshot helps reduce that. The reality is when we focus not on how we're doing all the time, but on what we're doing, it brings focus and purpose to even the smallest routines of our lives. Even if we're simply cutting the carrots, when we're with that moment, it tends to elevate our experience. In Judaism, the term kavanah in Hebrew, which is intentional prayer, it's a form of mindful intention. It's praying with the heart rather than solely the mind. Kavanah is focused intention for lighting the candles. Ultimately, when we are fully present with whatever we're doing, with our heart and our mind and our spirit, it elevates everything that we're doing. It takes the mundane and it makes it meaningful. And there is something profoundly beautiful to being fully present to whatever time we are given. So mindfulness, rather than the mental exercise, is outside of a formal training. It's a moment-to-moment, non-judgmental experience to what we do on purpose. And in Pali, the language of the Buddha, sati meant to remember to remember. I will tell you, I know firsthand, it's one of the hardest things that we do is to remembering, to being present. We are so distracted so much of the time. So our next exercise and activity, because remember, you have to do this to get the benefits. We can't just read about it. We have to engage in it. It's called positive activity that necessitates our brain and our body and leaves us with a really nice sense of accomplishment. It's engaging in something where our mind and our body connect. It could be, I don't know, it could be cooking, it could be painting, it could be movement. I will tell you an interesting thing for me during this pandemic. I've started baking, go figure, and it's been really rewarding for me when we're fully engaged in whatever it is that we're doing. And the last exercise for your shalom work is to begin your day with gratitude. It is a form of focused prayer. It's the reverse. Prayer is asking, mindful gratitude is really noticing. It primes our brain for resilience. We pivot to see what is good in our lives. And it helps us overcome our negative bias and our negative entrenched conditions. And what we know is, and that's what the Working Wisdom Project is that was published through Berkeley, is that it also improves our immune system. And we have a neurological response for it. So wherever you are right now, soften in, notice if you're holding any tension, relax. And I'd like you to think about 5 things that you're grateful for. And when we pivot like that, when we prime ourselves to begin our day by noticing and being thankful and grateful for what is good in our lives, to me, it's like putting a destination in Waze or Google Maps. We go towards our directionally on a path in a more positive and optimistic way. It helps us override things that are more difficult. I'm going to encourage you to start your day, every day, with noticing what you're grateful for. So our own work is to breathe. Help us regulate our stress response, to focus, to take snapshots throughout the day. Because these moments, all of our moments, the good and the difficult, are worth remembering. Have some self-compassion and patience with yourself. Very often, what meditation allows us to notice is faulty thinking or unrealistically high standards that we may have for ourselves. That meta-awareness of patterns is important. So our own work, let's call it our shalom work, is to cultivate more ease and more peace in our lives. Evidence-based research that says when we are more mindful, we strengthen our ability to reduce mind wandering, and that reduces worry and improves all that we do. And I know firsthand that it's always a matter of overriding those tendencies. Our brains are only designed to keep us safe and to problem solve, not necessarily to be happy. That is up to us. And right now, more than ever, we want to reduce our stress and find more calm in this chaos so that we can live with more ease and more grace, less stress, and more patience and more self-compassion and more self-love. Because when we have that for others as well. We're always dealing with uncertainty. And right now, we may be feeling even more groundless. So allow yourselves these practices into your life. Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Buddhist philosopher, said, because of impermanence, everything is possible. This is an opportunity for us to learn, to take the time to invest in our well-being, to strengthen our capacity to show up and be grateful for the miracles and the moments we are given, whatever they are. There's a wonderful proverb I'm going to end with that I read lately. If there is light in the soul, there will be beauty in the person. If there is beauty in the person, there will be harmony in the house. If there is harmony in the house, there will be order in the nation. And if there is order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. I'm going to pray that you all stay present, stay in, and stay safe. Because when you can't go outside, let's go inside. Let's do this self-work right now for more meaning and more purpose, more resilience, so that we can have more ease. In addition, I'm going to give you my email so that you can get on my mailing list so that I can share with you the MMM program. I am going to invite everybody here to be a guest at that. I would really be grateful to share that project with you. And if somebody is in great need, I am here also of service. I am here to share with you a 20-minute session. My email is linda@mindfulalliance.org. linda@mindfulalliance.org. I am grateful for Sharsheret to have the privilege and the opportunity to share some of the science. Remember, it's practice, it's not a perfect, but the more that we do it, the more it becomes familiar. And the more familiar it is, the more we can live with ease and grace and goodness. So linda@mindfulalliance.org. And my heart is open for any questions that you guys have for me.
Thank you, Linda. Really appreciate. I think it's the first time personally for me that I've had quiet and deep thinking since it started. So just for that alone to bring us together, I think that's so helpful. And space and your tone, just perfect for what we all needed today. So thank you so much of giving of yourself. We did have a few questions that came in advance, and I would love to pose them to you for in the next couple of minutes. And if anyone does have other questions that they want, general questions, they can type it into the chat. But for practical purposes, someone gave a very specific question. How can I control my anger towards my family during this difficult time? We're all on top of each other and my kids are more needy than usual.
Oh, that's an outstanding question. You know, anger is something we generate in ourselves, and it is really an emotional toxin. I think right now is to really soften our expectations. And I think that When we feel so out of control, we often feel the desire to control what is in front of us. Social psychologists are saying now more than ever, even our buying patterns, whether it be the need to hunt and gather toilet paper to even what's in our home. You know, I don't know the age of the children, but we know that presence and mindfulness and mindful parenting is significant, perhaps more now than ever. That when we give our children our full attention, rather than being distracted, they'll do anything to get our attention, even with poor behavior. So ensuring that we have things like proper meal times where the phone is not on. Really, I encourage individuals, reduce television news exposure. The mind can't, it's like watching a horror film right now. We still feel that stress response. Make sure the access to television news is really reduced. If possible, particularly with kids, have them do some physical exercise. Get them, if possible, outside. If not, do something inside. Stars for 100 jumping jacks. But recognize how we respond to our own emotions really is what mindfulness and awareness and that meta-awareness is about. It's learning how to calm ourselves down and to have more ease in our bodies, because emotions are sensations. Anger and resentment is a sensation. So use breath, use meditation. Observe your own standards, that they're not unrealistically high right now. Things may be noisy, and to have some acceptance with that.
Thank you. Another question came in. What is tapping meditation, and what do you think of its efficacy?
I think that there's there's a variety of different meditations, and I think what we're trying to do is focus the brain. The brain, really, that muscle, it's the desire to get hooked by thoughts and feelings. And as we strengthen our capacity to focus, and that's exactly what that does. It's a mind-body connection where tapping is used as a focus. We strengthen our capacity to respond to our thoughts. These mental exercises help us respond to our thoughts. So rather than inhabiting anger or fear, we can intentionally respond to situations with more grace and presence.
Someone asked, my mastectomy was canceled until further notice due to COVID. How do I remain calm?
I think that it is the desire to begin again, is to have some compassion. It's not that the fear won't show up. I think cultivating calm every day is that place of beginning again, is using breath to stay calm, is using mindfulness and gratitude and meditation, and to deal with the what ifs. We want to plan when our change, our plans are changed. The what ifs are those mental and emotional hooks that push us into that place of fear. What we know is now, and this will pass. So for now, the kindest and best thing that we can do is stay as present as possible. And when the what if comes up, is to come back to fact, to deal with what is. And what now is to do what we can to stay as present as calm as we can.
Thank you. So we're getting towards the end of the webinar. So I wanted to thank you. And again, thank you so much for sharing your email address with everyone. It's in the chat box. I also, not exactly the same, wanted to let everyone on the call know that Sharsheret has a team of social workers and a genetic counselor on staff who can help with other types of coping mechanisms and skills to help weather this storm and beyond. Sharsheret's social workers and genetic counselors have always been providing this kind of emotional support, mental health counseling and guidance by the phone and by email, texting, whatever you're most comfortable doing at any point. We are here for you. We continue to be here for you. And we really care about you and getting you through this. We know that you're in your homes alone, but we say that we are all together, and we really are seeing some of your faces, your names, whether they're real or not. It helps us feel more connected. Sharsheret is the Hebrew word for chain, and we want everyone to be part of that chain, and that's what makes us stronger. So take advantage of the services that we offer that are free, that are confidential, that are available to you when you need it, how often you need it, in any way. Really, it's an honor to be there for you, and mental health and mindfulness, that's what's going to get us through this until we hear real directions on what's next. This is where we are, and we're going to do this together, and we're going to see the future in a better way, in a calm way, and we're going to stay present. So wishing everyone continued good health, stay in touch, and we'll be presenting webinars on other topics in the next coming weeks, and this will be archived on our website, sharsheret.org. Thank you, and stay well.